Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and today I have 15 comics, which has kind of become my average amount of comics that I get for a week. So let's get started. My least favorite comic this week is Detective Comics issue 1006. I do like this cover a lot though, especially the way the white is used in the cover. I think that's really cool. Story, on the other hand, I'm not a big Spectre fan. I've never really cared about the character, so to have a whole issue pretty much about him, just wasn't really a fan of it. Again, just couldn't get into the narrative overall. Didn't really like the artwork with Batman's long ears. I know that's kind of a style that you especially would see in like a Spectre darker story. So I get the style, just not really my thing. Honestly, I might skip this whole entire arc. I don't know how long it is, so I might drop Detective until the arc is over. But I've been reading Detective since the beginning, so I don't know. I guess it'll depend on like how big the week is the next time Detective comes out. But wasn't really fond of this book. Couldn't really find anything I liked about it. Again, it's just not really my style. So overall, I'm going to give this 1.5 stars, and that is number 15. Moving on to number 14, and that is another DC book, kind of in the same vein, and instead of Batman, it's Superman, Action Comics, issue 1012. I did drop Superman, because I really don't like the Rogozar arc at all, but I am reading the Leviathan storyline, so I'm still reading Action Comics, and it's the story I enjoy the most out of the Superman titles. And obviously, like, if you're following DC Comics, I feel like this is, you know, one of the bigger titles you have to follow if you want to know about the whole entire, continuity of what's going on in the broader sense of DC Comics. So it's one of the flagship comics to get. So I'm trying to stick with Action Comics, but wasn't really impressed with this one. Nothing really happens. It's kind of the same old story of Leviathan comes and says, hey, join my team. And this time it's for a character we haven't seen in a really long time, Rose and Thorn. So if you like her character, you might really enjoy this issue, but I really don't know anything about her, so I didn't feel attached to this at all. Also, didn't really like the artwork. I thought Lois looked weird. This is not a Lois page, but the line work was really strange here for me. Very light. And let me show you Lois. She just didn't look like Lois Lane at all. Like, I don't think that looks like Lois at all. It just, like, doesn't look like her likeness. So, even Superman looked weird here. I don't know. I wasn't into the artwork. Again, just wasn't into this story. And I was pretty disappointed with it. Again, I will stick with Action Comics for the time being, but haven't really been impressed with it. So overall, I'm going to give that 2 stars, and that is number 14. Moving on to number 13, which is a book I was actually really looking forward to, and that is Wolverine Exit Wounds, issue 1. This is a one-shot for Wolverine and some of his biggest creators, and I was really looking forward to this because I am a huge fan of Kitty, as you guys know, but one of my favorite stories of all time is Wolverine and Kitty Pryde, the miniseries, and this actually has an aftermath story of what happens after that miniseries from Chris Claremont, you know, the creator of Kitty Pryde. So I was really excited for this, but I didn't get into any of the stories. The first story is Weapon X, what's going on through Wolverine's mind type story. I've seen that a billion times. The other one's kind of more of Japanese influence story. Just couldn't really get into the artwork at all, or the story in general. It's like a Venom storyline, just not my style. And then the middle story, again, being the meat of the story, which is Kitty, she didn't really sound right to me here. And maybe because it's been such a long time since Kitty's been 13, it just felt really off this whole entire issue, and I just don't feel like it was needed in general. I know it's supposed to be like the celebration of 80 years, but I don't think it was worth $4.99. There was no story that really popped out from me or for me, so Wolverine Exit Wounds issue 1 gets 2.5 stars, I believe. Let me just double check that. That is 2 stars, actually, and that was number 13. Moving on to number 12, which is another kind of a larger book, and that is SpiderMan Annual Issue 1, and this is a Spider-Ham issue, and this is actually written by Jason Latour, the creator of Spider-Gwen, so of course I wanted to pick this up, and it was like an introduction of this bird-like Spider-Gwen characters. I wanted to check it out, but it is $4.99, and I will say it wasn't my type of humor, and that's why it was lower. It's, you know, a day in the life of Spider-Ham, and there's some ridiculous things that he has to go through, and even some existential crises that he has to go through in this issue. And the artwork is fun overall, and it's a fun book, but again, I don't know if I went back to the comic book store and I knew what the story was, I don't know if I would go pick it up. I don't know if I have to recommend it to you, but if you like Spider-Ham, go check it out, especially because it's a little bit more in the vein of the Spider-Verse movie, so if you really liked him there, go check it out, and if you want to learn more about him, but I wish I laughed a little bit more with this one, but that's the thing with humor. We all have different styles of humor, and, you know, just didn't hit my funny bone for this one. But Spider-Ham / Spider-Man Annual Issue 1 gets 2.5 stars, and that is number 12, I believe? Moving on to number 11, which is Miss Marvel, Issue 4. Have not liked this arc. As you guys know, huge Kamala fan, love Miss Marvel, but haven't liked the new direction much. Just because we're taking her into space, I think it really took away from what our character is about. And not saying that you can't do a story like this, I just don't think it should be your opening arc, showing, this is, you know, only the second person who's taken over Kamala. G. Wilson wrote her for 5+ years, I think, or maybe exactly 5 years. So she's the only one who's really wrote this character in her ongoing. So this is a new person. I kind of wish I would see the day-to-day of what this series is going to be about, but throwing her into space felt really quick, and I just feel like it's not her character, and I want the creative team to prove that they know the character before they do something like this. So yeah, I haven't really been feeling this arc at all. Hopefully it improves. I think the annual comes out next week, so it'll be a different type of story for Kamala. And then soon, she's going to go back to Earth, so I'm really excited about that and seeing her supporting cast, because that's what I missed. But the thing I do like about this issue is seeing the parents kind of being like, oh my god, what's going on? I'm on another planet. So that's kind of cool. I like the concept of it. I don't know if there was like a major scene that was interesting from them, but I do like that they are involved, and it's not just Kamala. It makes it a little bit more interesting, the story. But overall, I'm going to give this 2.5 stars. It was an okay issue. Art's pretty solid overall. I do like the coloring a lot from Ian Herring, who makes it very consistent because he's been the colorist on this series for 61 issues, or at least I think he's done it since the beginning, or at least he's been on the series for a really long time. So, again, overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 11. And take a sip of water, and then we'll move on to top 10. Number 10. All right. Number 10 is Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, issue 8. I believe this is the variant cover. I really like a lot of Marvel's variants. I think they've been doing a good job with them. Yeah, it is a variant cover. This issue's pretty interesting, where we get to see the Prowler and Peter team up with each other. So that's cool. And the Prowler is, you know, he's a villain, but he's like not that bad of a villain. So it's kind of cool to see them go into that and go into their team up and figure out who did try to steal stuff from this homeless shelter, and then you find out it has to do with putting money into this crowdfunding thing, which was a little off the wall for me, which is why it's a little lower, and this weird looking old guy in the end who's attached to things that looked like tweets or like Craigslist ads. I don't know. It was a little weird, the ending, and I still don't love the coloring. I don't know, maybe it's the orange. I just feel like the colors don't really match very well, so the artwork's okay for me. But again, I think it's really cool to see a Prowler and Spider-Man team up. It's cool to see Spider-Man team up with a detective kind of in this issue, and kind of mentions like, oh, this is different, because usually the police are chasing me. So I will also say it does get a little preachy, though, the friendly neighborhood aspect. I'm like, all right, I get that's the title of it, but I want to expand past just doing like, oh, homeless shelters and stuff like that. So not saying it's a bad thing. I just think sometimes it touches the line of preachiness or cheesiness. But overall, I like Tom Taylor's voice on Spider-Man a lot. And like I said, it's cool to see a team up like Prowler and Spider-Man. It was fun. So overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars, and that is number 10. Moving on to number 9. And number 9 is another Spider-Man cover, but not a Spider-Man comic, and that is Fantastic Four issue 11. Pretty fun issue. I do think there's a lot going on. There's this like multi-dimensional thing going on, and then also the kids having their driver's test, and you know, Franklin still being a pouty, angsty teen. So there's a lot packed into this issue, even though it's kind of a filler issue of them just having their driving tests. But it's a fun issue. I like their interactions a lot. I really like the way Dan Slott writes these characters. The artwork feels a little chaotic as well, though, with, again, the style of storytelling. And that tends to happen in Dan Slott type comics, especially in these superhero-esque comics. I wouldn't say it happened in Silver Surfer as much, but overall, it was a fun issue. I've been liking Fantastic Four. So, gonna give that 3.5 stars, and that is number 9. All right, moving on to number 8, and that is Avant-Guards, issue 6. This is just a fun book. It doesn't meet the level of High Fight Club / Heavy Vinyl, but I do like it. I like learning more about these characters and their basketball games that come up, and I guess the slice of life aspect of that. In this one, we get to see them winning a lot of games, and some, like, they didn't even have to play, and that's how they won. And then they also go up against some hard players, which is kind of cool to see as well, how they deal with a loss and how they deal with a win. Through different characters' perspectives in every issue, which is really cool. So overall, giving this 3.5 stars. If you like sports comics, slice of life comics, I recommend this one. I think it's a fun read. All right, moving on to number 7, which is another Boom book, and that is Angel issue 2. I'm a hardcore Angel fan of the TV show. It's one of my favorites. I was really excited for this comic to be released as a surprise. And with this issue, I really like how Angel deals with some more social aspects of society and how we deal with a mirror always being in front of our face with social media, even though it's not like a correct mirror. It doesn't really reflect us, but we try to show our best versions and how that could, you know, affect us psychologically. And we really get to see that with one of these girls who's interacting with this weird guy and ends up in a mental hospital by the end of the issue. So that was pretty interesting. But yeah, I like the mystery that's unraveling. I will say the flashbacks haven't really connected as much for me. Like, I don't know how that's going to flow with the overall arc, but I do like the flashbacks and I like the artwork. I think it does a really good job with light and dark contrast here. So yeah, overall really enjoyed this issue though, and been liking the series. So I'm going to give that 3.5 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6. And number 6 for me is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 24, which I also got the variant cover for. I believe this is a Mark Brooks variant. I do like his artwork a lot. And this issue is pretty solid. I enjoyed it. We get to get into really the psyche of Mysterio, and did he die? Did he not die? Seems like he did, but people want to trick him that he didn't, and that's all in his head. And you know, seeing the parallel with Spider-Man also dealing with this worm creature that is getting into Peter's head and making him believe that MJ was going to die and all that. And finally Peter opens up to MJ and say, hey, this happened. Our life's perfect, but, like, I'm worried. And then we're getting a little closer to finding out who this guy is, and I'm really excited about that. It's a big tease in this issue. I will say this is a very teasy issue, but I liked it. I liked Peter's voice. I liked seeing more from Mysterio, even though some of it's like exposition, here's who Mysterio is, and I'm for hardcore fans, you know who Mysterio is, but it's cooler to kind of get into another layer of his, and also love the Peter and MJ stuff, as always. So, The Amazing Spider-Man issue 24 gets a solid 4 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on, and also love that Ryan Ottley is back on artwork. It's always nice to see his work. But yeah, moving on to number 5, which I'm glad this made my top 5 because I've been really pleasantly surprised by it, and that is Glow, issue 3. I do like the television show a lot. I think it's a really fun one, and I really like this comic because I think with tie-ins, they kind of have trouble because it's just like, how much can we do? Because the show's still going on. You can't really have long-lasting plot lines that change the characters, because then you're like, oh, well, you have to read the comic to understand the TV show? That makes no sense. So how do you kind of meet that line of actually doing something in the comic without, affecting the TV show. And I think Lo kind of meets that line in a really cool way. There's some really great character moments with, of course, our main character here, which I have the whole list of their names because I tend to forget their names because there's like 12 of them. But Ruth, she's obviously our main character, and she's obsessed with the wrestling stuff, but from a different angle. And she meets a real wrestler, and they kind of find this middle ground, which is really interesting. And she believes that she's the coach of this team, or at least tries to believe it, which is interesting. And then I like a lot of the humor, especially Welfare Queen, where she has all these dolls, and she's like all on medicine and, all high. And she's selling all these dolls and people just want it. And I really like the cartooniness of the book as well. But then you get to see characters like Jenny, who you don't really get to see as much on the show, deal with, who am I within this show? Like, am I good enough to be the title character, or am I not? Or sell merchandise? So I thought that was cool. And then we also get to see Macho Picchu, want to fight, and obviously her brother is not finding out about it. So will she get the mask of this other famous wrestler? We'll have to see. But I really enjoyed this book. It's funny, fun, and again, it has some really good character moments that expands the TV show, but doesn't affect the plot of the television show. So it actually feels like you should be reading this, and it's just a wonderful tie-in. So Glow issue 3 gets 4 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to number 4. And number 4 for me is War of the Realms, issue 6, which I got the Thor variant, Mike Del Mundo variant for this. I am going to do a whole video on Friday, probably, about if I enjoyed War of the Realms. Hint, hint, I did. But just the overall review of the event, I'm going to do for Friday. But what I think of this issue overall, I really enjoyed it. My one negative of the book, and I guess the negative of the event, has been that I feel like the best parts are about Thor, and there are some missed opportunities with the Midgard characters. I think the only character that really got the shine was Daredevil, and we even get to see in this issue. Everyone else is just kind of there. And I think this could have just been a Thor event. I don't think it had to be a Marvel event. But I really love the Thor stuff, and they mainly focus on the Thor stuff, so it's okay. And what I like is that we really get to see a journey for everybody. Jane, obviously being Thor again, and just having that one last time that she could be Thor, and a really cool lead up to her Valkyrie series, which I am stoked for. And I love the line in the end where it's like, hey, embrace the new and the old. Just because there's something new doesn't mean it replaces the old. They could kind of both coexist, and I think that's a really interesting thing for comics in general, especially Thor, which honestly had a very changing narrative, and Odin's son not really being part of the comic for like 2 years, and either you embraced Jane or you didn't. Honestly, Jane is the reason I got into Thor comics, so it was kind of cool to have that message by the end. And honestly, it's a really good Thor issue, it's a really good Jane issue, it's a good Odin issue. I think everyone has their shining moments, which is cool. And Thor, he gets the hammer back. I like that they kind of changed the words there and changed the idea of the Thor hammer of, Thor keep thinking, I'm not worthy enough for the hammer. And it's like, no, first of all, it's a relationship between each other, but, maybe you kind of have to look at it differently. So I like that. And he becomes the all-father of Asgard, so we're going to see how that plays out. There's just some really great moments, and the artwork is just so cinematic and beautiful. And it's just a really cool epic story, which is exactly what you want from an epic poem-like story like Thor. So I'm really excited to see where this is going to go. I'm excited for the epilogue, just to see where everything's going to be placed, and a lot of these spin-off series, especially, obviously, the Valkyrie series. So really enjoyed this issue. Solid 4 stars. Again, I will be doing a video on Friday kind of discussing the overall arc a little bit more, and why I think this was a successful Marvel event, and why Marvel hasn't really had a successful event like this in storytelling perspective in a while. Alright, moving on to number 3, though, and that is Runaways, issue 22. Really solid issue. I love this book. That is no surprise. The artwork is just top notch. I really love how expressive it is, from, you know, Carolina trying to be a superhero and kind of sucking at it, to even just the emotional parts with Carolina and Nico. Just some of the body language was really well played out here. So the artwork, I could go on about just small panels that are great, and that's how you know the artwork was just, you know, really awesome in this issue. But there's some really good character moments here too. Going to Carolina, you know, she's kind of fighting off, you know, that she feels like she's going to become our parents one day, and she doesn't know who she is. So she's like, you know what? I'm going to be a superhero. And, it, you know, I don't know if it's really working out for her, but she's really happy about it. And she's interacted with Nico, and she's like, oh my god, I had such a great day. And Nico's like, I just worked for 9 hours, and then for an hour I was just waiting for you and worried about you. So yeah, I didn't have the best day. What's going on? What made it such a good day? This normal, you know, Tuesday, let's say. So I thought that was really interesting. But then on the flip side of another relationship, we get to see Chase and Gert, and Chase dealing with not being with Gert anymore, and kind of putting all his efforts to get Gert back because he wanted to be with Gert. And obviously it doesn't work out well, and this brings tension between Victor and Chase, and brings some Doombot battles by the end. I feel like everyone really has a cool shining moment here. Even Molly just wanting Doombot back and realizing that Doombot's not Doombot. And it looks like there's going to be an interesting issue for the next issue, because Victor is going to be interacting with Doombot within Doombot? Like, what's going on there? Is this, like, in his mind? Like, I'm curious about that. So, I thought it was a really solid issue. Like I said, always have fun with Runaways, and it's just such a great character-driven story. So, overall, giving that 4 stars, and that is number 3. Moving on to number 2. My number 2 this week is Dial H for Hero, issue 4. One of my favorite DC titles out right now. I think it balances humor and action and just things I haven't seen in comics so well, if that made sense. But yeah, this book is really well done. And with this issue, we get to see Miguel and Summer interact with Snapper Carr, out of all people. Who knew, right? We haven't seen him in a while. I'll show you an image of him. Snaps for Snapper. That's his name, right? Snapper Carr? That sounds weird. Yeah, Snapper Carr. That's his name. Yeah, really enjoyed the issue, because we get to see Snapper. You know, he's always been hanging out with the Justice League, and he wants to Dial H because he doesn't feel good enough. And Miguel is weary. He's like, I'm not giving you this. And then I loved this part of the issue. This is what really got this high on my top 5, is that all 3 of them get the Dial H, and they're all different types of heroes, and we get to see the different styles of art in the one page. And then we get to see that continued as their origins unfold, where you get to see ripped pages and all these different styles in this one book. And it just shows how Joe is such a great artist and so diverse. And I loved it. I thought it was so much fun, and it was just from story-wise, kind of dissecting the H style, you know, something that's kind of more of a culty concept of comic books, and making it universal and interesting, and especially by the end, where it looks like Miguel's kind of like in the H style. So what's going on there? I just feel like every issue does something so different that you just don't expect, and I love that. It kind of challenges the rules of DC's mythos and also comics, and you really get to see that from the panels to the writing, and how we get to see different styles intersect here. So really great comic. I've been loving Dial H again. I think next to Naomi, it's, I think, one of the best comics at DC, and one of my favorites. So giving this 4.5 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to number 1, which is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, issue 40, which is the part 1 to Necessary Evil, and Ryan taking over Power Rangers, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and doing both Go-Go and this series. And I really like this book. I thought it was great. So this kind of tackles more of the second generation of the Power Rangers, where we still have Billy, Kimberly, and, you know, Tommy, who's a later Ranger, in the story and in the narrative. But then you have Rocky and Aisha and, what's his name? Adam. Yeah, I don't know why I blanked on Adam's name, but it was cool to see them in the story and, deal with some emotional story here that you don't see in the show. They end up becoming really quick friends, but hey, first notice, these are kind of strangers. These are not your best friends. That was, Trini and Jason and Zach. These are not those people, even though they're wearing your best friend's costume. And that's kind of where Kimberly's at, especially. And I think that's such an interesting dynamic and conflict here. And then Aisha, she's just like, I love the Power Rangers, but sometimes I have to morph just to realize this is real. And they are newbies. They're not really great at this. And I like that as well. Something they couldn't tackle in the show that they're really tackling here. And you're really getting to see a lot of interesting character dynamics from them, of course, but even Tommy, who's just like kind of wary of, first of all, I'm the White Ranger, like this is power that I don't really know what to do with, and then second of all, I'm the leader now, and I lost my friends as well, what do I do? And then on the flip side, which was a really cool cliffhanger, we do get to see what happened to Jason, Trini, and Zach. They're also still Rangers, quote unquote. Like, what's going on? They're lying. They said they're doing this peace conference, and really, they're maybe part of the war again. So there's so many cool stuff here that I just can't wait to see where this arc ends up going and how this kind of ties into Go-Go, because Go-Go's still in kind of that season 1 phase, so how's this gonna intersect? I'm really curious. Also, Danielle on artwork again. Oh man, I love his artwork for Power Rangers. I fell in love with it when he did Power Rangers Pink. I love how he shows the facial expressions within the visors, I think is awesome. Just the action's great. Again, the emotion's really great, and there's a lot of ideas tackled here that the show never had a chance to do that makes it really a really cool, complex character study in general. So, really excited to see where this goes, and how this is going to connect to Shattered Grid, of course, and the overall plot of Boom's continuity of Power Rangers. So really great stuff here. I give that 4.5 stars. That's my pick of the week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Definitely let me know in the comments below what are your favorite comics from this week, your least favorite, and everything in between. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me definitely go check out my comics like Father Like Daughter and They Call Her a Dancer. Go check out my Twitter and Facebook page. And of course, every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time is Frontline Live, where we discuss our favorite comics and comic book news. Be sure to check that out as well. Thanks, guys. Bye.